So my abuse was in my teens. And so trust for me was kind of separated into different pieces because I didn't really have a reason not to trust people when I was very young. And that kind of led to like how easily I was able to be abused. It was kind of just like, because it was my father. So it was like family is just, who you do things with and you just trust everyone in general. And so I was like really easily groomed because it was just like no question. So when I think about this, I realized that I didn't have any real trust issues in not trusting people in the beginning. I actually trusted people too much right afterwards because my father died. So I was still a teenager and I just kind of didn't talk about it with people, just went on with my life. And I just continued being this like really passive and submissive person, but also trying to just be loved, and just get any kind of attention. So I didn't have any sense of boundaries. And I had no idea like what it meant when someone was taking advantage of me. Like I knew what had happened to me was wrong, but I didn't understand how to not let that happen or how to communicate it to anyone or myself. Like, so throughout like my adolescence and my college years, I just got into a lot of relationships that they just took advantage of me because they had things that they needed. And I was just like a free, like open heart. I just gave and gave, and eventually led to like me losing a lot of money and like adult things started happening. And then I realized like, wow, this is actually very uncomfortable. And so then that's when I realized that I was trusting too much. And I kind of closed off at that point, and I started to like become selfish and realize like, how can I not be taken advantage of? But it went towards like a really controlling place at that point. And so then I didn't trust anyone with anything, because it was like unsafe at that point because I had so many experiences that like piled on after the abuse. And then it's like now all I know is these bad things happen when I deal with people. So I have to just be in control of every situation. So even when I was in good relationships or like they started off good, I have to be in control of everything that's happening. I didn't trust people to do things on their own or be themselves or like let things happen naturally because I was afraid of, I guess, being taken advantage of subconsciously, but it was just so ingrained in me to like, I have to take care of myself. So nothing else, anyone else wanted to do like made sense to me. And so that's pretty much how it impacted me kind of over time.
In my situation, I have dealt with sexual violence both as a child as well as an adult. And it's kind of added a lot of different layers because, like, I started my healing process and then kind of in an entirely different way was back to zero because it was an entirely different circumstance. But when it first happened, I was really young and I knew the person. And not only did I just trust them, other people that I trusted so much and still do trusted them as well. So I like had to deal with this fact that amongst my like family and other trusted people, this person purposely misrepresented themselves. So I was watching them be somebody else. I was watching and listening to all of these trusted people say great things about them and love them. And then once others were gone, it was so different. So my foundation of trust was this knowledge that some people are magnificently talented at manipulating you to get what they want. So growing up, it took a very long time for me to first come to terms with the fact that I could have good memories and bad memories, and there could be multiple facets to everything, but also that not everyone is necessarily wearing this giant mask that could be taken off at any point. Like, it's a little bit of a funny way that I like dealt with it, but like Scooby-Doo always freaked me out because people would have this mask taken off at the end, and it was just a little too much like what I had experienced. So that kind of became how it affected me. I was always worried one day this mask would come off, that they would be so different. And now I can kind of see red flags, understand that not everyone is that diabolical in like how they approach it, but it's still kind of hard to not question it. So it's been a bit of a challenge even now, which is nearly 20 years later from when it first happened. So it kind of goes in that way for me.
For me, trauma has deeply impacted my ability to trust because now I often don't trust myself when I'm dealing with other people. Maybe not so much on a friendship level. I feel like I'm really good at reading work relationships or friendships or things like that. But when it's down to a more of a romantic note or like dating someone, I guess in the past I've been like, oh, I think this is like a really great person. And then things start to happen and it turns out they're not that great of a person, at least my experience with them. So I'm always second guessing myself now when I start to actually really like someone. I'm like, oh, I really like them. Maybe that's a bad thing. So I'm still trying to kind of work the kinks out on that.
Similar to Megan, I do trust more now. But that feeling of being out of control, and leaving my life up to someone else, just kind of scares me to like put responsibility into someone else's hands. Because I have had the experience of people being unpredictable, unreliable, and unsafe. And so that fear, really drives a lot of, how I act and how I connect with people. Um, but it also frustrates me, because I have like, I don't know, it's this sense of control of like, once I decide like, if I need to do something, it has to be done a certain way. And if other people do things differently, it makes me uncomfortable. And it's like I have this right way, like I think my way is the right way. And so there's a lot of control, and so that holds me back from letting people do things their own way, and like showing up in their authenticity, um and like trusting that they can get it done, whatever it might be. But it really is, like life, things that are important in life, basically. um and so fear also, I wanted to mention that when it comes to trusting, I have had challenges trusting myself. That's something I've really noticed in this. It's not just that I lost trust in others. I just never really developed trust in myself from the point of the abuse, because I was so young. And then after that, I never had any opportunity to see how my actions led to things that I felt good about, because I ended up in these like shitty relationships. Excuse me if I don't know if cussing is okay, but it's like, oh, that was another poor decision. That was another poor relationship, and they did this to me. So then I didn't even trust myself. Um, and then when it came to like professional life and things like that, I would do things that wouldn't come out as best as I wanted them to. And so then anytime I would try something new, I would have a fear of like things are going to end up bad again. Um, and so that's really how it holds me back. It's just like having this fear of what people could do or what I'm capable of, and not trusting myself or them.
The biggest like barrier, like thing that holds me back has always been myself. Because like I will get to a point where I'm like, I think I could trust this person. And then there's this like voice in the back of my head that is very annoying that will like jump in and be like, well, you thought that about, and like this list. And some of it's trauma stuff, some of it's just, douchey boyfriends, or like the wrong choice of a friend. And it doesn't matter if it's small, it just has become that thing where I'm like, can I trust my own judgment? And that's where the biggest thing, because like I'll have that like urge to trust someone or to like open up a little bit more. And then I just have to, calm down the part of my brain that's just like, well, you've been wrong in the past, so maybe take a step back and figure it out. And that's kind of like been a big one. Otherwise, like the other thing is just kind of like occasionally I'm a little too focused on how people present themselves. Like a bad day can also be a little bit of a signal that maybe something's different about them. Maybe I saw a different side to them. So I have to be cautious what's like a trigger, and like be very empathetic that like we're not being disingenuous if on a bad day, maybe we're not acting exactly the same as we do when we're happy. It's just a different facet to someone's personality that I'm uncovering.
I just wanted to touch on the end of what Megan was saying about people showing up differently if they're having a bad day. That was something that happened to me with someone, and I did get very like uncomfortable, and I was like afraid that they didn't want me in their life anymore. Like, like something was wrong with me. And that's interesting. I never thought about it in like the trust sense of like just trusting that they're just going through something. And I did have to reflect on that moment. Like it's okay to have emotions, because that was something that I struggled with within my own healing, was just expressing emotion. So yeah, seeing that in other people, you're like, are you upset with, are you mad? Are you trying to pull away? No, and I just had a bad day, but I appreciate you bringing that up.
I would say what holds me back from trusting others is my own trauma that I've experienced and seeing my friends deal with certain things. So I've seen my friends in very toxic situations with their significant others or with the father of their children. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to be in that situation either. Or same thing, like when I'm trying to get to know someone, sometimes certain things will remind me of certain things that'll happen. Or I'll give you like a quick example. I was talking to this one guy, we're hanging out in my house. I'm sitting in the living room, he's by my computer desk, and he was walking over to me, but he was walking kind of fast. And my reaction was like, I flinched and like I kind of like curled up, and he was like, whoa. And I was like, it has nothing to do with you. So sometimes things like that will happen with me where like I'm triggered even by like fast movement sometimes with people. So it always kind of goes back to like what I dealt with.
For me, kind of what I was touching on, for me, trusting, I don't share things about my feelings, and I really keep them to myself. And I don't consciously think I can't trust people. I've just never had people around that I could trust when I was young. I mean, maybe I could have, but I didn't know that. Like, I didn't have experiences that taught me that I could trust them. So like during the abuse, I didn't talk about it. I didn't share it with anyone. And so after that, that's just how my communication continued for many years, where I just keep all of my thoughts and my feelings to myself. And I do, I guess, feel like they're not going to be able to handle it, but it is, I don't know. I'm just so used to being that way. So it is something that I'm practicing, like trusting others that they can listen, or that they have the capacity, or they want to be there for me. Because I have had experiences with people who have not responded in a supportive way after I've shared this specific experience. And so then that does teach me, like, can I trust this person? And so yeah, like you said, there's layers throughout the years of like how things show up, and does change my perspective. Um and then just showing up also by like not letting people do things on their own, in their own way, and trusting that it'll be okay no matter what, if I'm not involved.
So my like trust issues show up in my life in a weird way, because I will like have really hard issues trusting certain people, but I have this like selective group that I am like ride or die. And some of it's like family or friends that like have been with me as I've grown through this, and like have built a different kind of trust from being through the experience. And it took a long time for me to realize it, but because I don't trust myself very much when situations arise, particularly like when it comes to like sexual partners or romantic partners and all that, I will rely very, very heavily on outside perspectives. So I won't trust my own opinion. I will go to someone and be like, this is hurting me, but like, am I just being paranoid? Am I just being this, right? Like, is it my PTSD, or is this really a big deal? So my last like notable relationship that had me, I guess, realize this, I kept going to people who had different relationship value systems than me and being like, here's what's happening. And they'd be like, oh, that's normal. And I'm like, later I'm looking back, I'm like, oh, for so many reasons, I shouldn't have relied on that. But it meant for like so much of that relationship, I stayed while being treated objectively just not well, because I couldn't trust myself to know that I was like in the right place. I was just like, oh, it's my trust issues. Because everybody would say, like, I have trust issues, I have relationship issues, or I'm paranoid because of my PTSD. And it turned out that like a lot of it was me actually just picking up red flags on like cheating things or, other stuff like that. So that's it, kind of like just made me so dismissive of my own experiences. And I'm slowly working through that like process of fixing that.
For me, my trust issues show off as me being very closed off. Because I'm normally an extrovert. I'm a very open person. I like to talk a lot. But if I feel like I don't trust you or I'm losing trust in a situation, I start to get very quiet. I start to be very one word and I start to become very distant. So I feel like it's very obvious when like I'm not trusting a situation. Or if I'm talking to someone, they can definitely feel that I'm kind of like moving away from them because of what's going on. Yeah.
So yes, it is a slow process. It did take me almost 20 years to really realize that I wasn't trusting people or myself. And it wasn't until actually I was going skydiving that I fully grasped that I didn't trust myself, because I had planned the skydiving and I had like no fear. I was like, I signed up, I was already ready to go. And I didn't fear like I was gonna die or like I was okay with dying. I was just like, everything's gonna work out. And I thought about why do I think that about this experience? And what I realized was I just trusted the skydiving process. And so I thought about that like the night or a couple days before I went. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to start doing that, just like having this full confidence in myself and in others. And I actually tattooed the word trust onto my chest, like right here above my heart, and claimed it and really started to remind myself like it's okay to trust people. And it wasn't like instantly I trusted myself or others right after that, but that reminds me, like every time I think of that experience and then now I have this tattoo, it really pushed me to figure out what it was that was um keeping me from trusting myself first and then not trusting others. And so from there, I started releasing more trauma, like physically and verbally, doing therapeutic and other types of practices that allowed me to clear my emotional space and my mind. The one that really started off was EMDR, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of that, but it was new to me a few years ago. And that helped me have like a true release process, because I had talked about the trauma and like had very minimal therapy here and there before that, but didn't go deep. It's like just talking about it doesn't quite get it out. And so the physical release, verbally, like I said, and like letting myself cry and kind of get it out of my body really helped me start to see and think clearly. And now I can see myself more clearly and others and not have a fear, just like a unreasonable fear. It's more like, okay, I'll look at them and decide based on their actual actions and not something I'm just making up in my mind, if I can trust them or not.
I approach everything with the idea that like any new person I'm meeting, we're coming in at 0-0 with each other. So, trust is earned, built. So I place the same expectations on myself. Like we're both coming in and showing the other person where we're at. So being cautious, watching, not coming in super strong, but like matching energy for what they expect of me, what I expect of them. And that kind of helps me a little bit because it's a lot of pressure when it's just you giving someone else trust. So I found when I'm thinking about the fact that like they're also building trust with me, I could like kind of see how we ebbed and flowed because it's totally cool to have different types of trusting relationships with different people. I have, the friends that I trust to help me when my car breaks down, but I might not call them if I wake up from like a really bad trauma nightmare, or like share that part of my life, and it's totally fine. So I approach it in that capacity and watch things, pay attention if I feel like maybe they're trying to push trust too quickly. I like clock it and see how I feel about it and just stay mindful through the process because it will take time. Not a single one of the people I trust, like a lot at this point in my life, had that trust at every single point. And it's kind of just, it's going to take time in every single type of relationship. And it's fine that that happens.
To build trust with others, the most important thing for me is to listen to my gut. That's number one. Because I feel like a lot of times I've been in situations where I'm like, I know something's not right, but because maybe I'm in love with the other person, or maybe because I don't have hardcore evidence, I'm like, oh, okay. And then it turns out that like I was right. And that goes with dating or trauma or just anything in life, just listening to myself. And number two is giving things time, especially me as a Pisces, I'm very impulsive. Like I'm very like fast burning, like, and I have to remember to slow down. So like, I feel like part of my healing process has been taking time. And like, when I see that first red flag, I'm out. It could be like an orange, a pink, any shade of red, I am out of there.
So I'm still working on this. So I don't really consciously think about safety when it comes to trust. I know that that's the underlying thing that I'm concerned about, but like I'm not thinking, is this person safe? So what I try to do is give people a chance to like be themselves and like do things how they want. And then I will gauge how much I feel that that it's supporting me, and like what I need. Um, and then I'll decide if I'll keep them around or not, or if their actions like put me in danger in some way. Um, and like follow through. A lot of people say they're going to do something, but sometimes don't do those things. And it may be subtle, but still something I notice. And it just really makes me think, how committed are they to building this relationship, even if it's like starting off. Um, Even if it's been around for a little while, sometimes people kind of ebb and flow through like their follow through. And then I try to take into consideration, is this someone I really need to have in my life? But I am setting more boundaries now. Recently, I was just communicating with some people that I was trying to meet some new friends, try to get out and socialize more. And the follow through and like how they were communicating was just not really like taking me into consideration. It was like all about what they needed, and I really felt off about it. And so I decided not to like push it and like see, well, maybe it's just me making this up. And, like you said, like noticing red flags. And before I would kind of force situations because I just wanted to have a friend or wanted to have a relationship, like just we'll make it work kind of thing, or just like turn a blind eye to it. And so now I actually like decided to stop talking to those people. It's like I don't feel right about this, so I'm just not going to continue. And it felt really good. It felt very good to set that boundary. And afterwards, like I didn't feel like I didn't regret it or like second guess myself. And that is something I've dealt with, making decisions, not trusting my choice. And so when I did that, I felt very confident, like, okay, now I can see these things before they come up. And that is a big factor in relationships specifically, is not let those red flags kind of pass by.
I think like when it comes to feeling safe or knowing you're safe, it's very hard in these circumstances because, when you're trusting somebody, you're putting out a leap of faith in another person's actions and their follow through. And part of that's also, trusting that they're not going to change too much, that your trust would have been put in like the wrong place. So there's so many variables. But the best that I can say for myself at feeling safe has been to try to trust my own instincts instead of second guessing them, kind of being like, there is a reason I felt this way. I have also tried to to stop listening to other people about it. Like, I trust some, but at the end of the day, like, I'm the only one who kind of knows where I'm at. So I take their perspectives into account. If somebody comes to me and they're like, they did this weird thing, it's a red flag to me. I will listen. But I'm kind of like in a place where feeling safe about trusting, feeling safe to go forward means like taking into account my perspective of what's going on, taking into account what I'm seeing. Cause like my body responds to things pretty intently after, right? Like if somebody makes me uncomfortable, my body is telling me, not just my brain, right? Like I'm getting anxious. I will physically feel it in my shoulders when a boundary is crossed. So just like clocking those things and trusting that like, even if it can be hard to place, if something feels off, there's a reason for it and people may change. So later on, if I start to feel something's off, it doesn't mean I necessarily put my trust in the wrong person. It just might mean that they've changed or circumstances changed. Maybe that my trust is different, right? Like if I trust somebody with something personal and it happens to not have been the right choice, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not trustworthy. They just might not be like a person to like emotionally give my trust to. They might be like very reliable. They might be the like watch my cat type of friend. So keeping that in mind, that like safety is going to ebb and flow based off what you're trusting them with, based off what you're getting back from them in different circumstances, and remembering that like if for some reason it's not exactly as you pictured it, or if something doesn't quite go the way you did, it doesn't mean your trust in yourself is wrong, right? It doesn't mean that you are wrong. It just might mean that there's a lot more at play. So keeping that in mind for yourself.
I feel like you never really know 100% when it's safe. I feel like I go through that. Like, I don't know if I could say that there's someone that I trust 100%, right? But I feel like a part of that is also paying attention to what people do for you. Like, are people that you're dealing with, are they doing what they say they're going to do, or are they just telling you that they're going to do something and then their actions don't meet? So for me, that helps me to trust someone. Like my best friends, for example, I've known them for years, and even knowing them for years, it took me a while to kind of share some things that I've been through or share certain thoughts or things like that. But I felt comfortable because I saw that their words were matching their actions. And when I really needed them, they were there for me. Or when I was going through my abuse and I needed someone at 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, because I felt like I was dying, like they would come in the middle of the night and like sit with me and watch a movie with me and like just be there. And that's when I was like, yeah, I can trust this person because they're actually showing up for me and not just talking about it.
When it comes to like handling a change where you like, you start to not trust someone, they've changed, everything like that. I have handled it anywhere from cutting somebody off to distancing as they go through their situation to like readjusting my expectations. Like it's been a range based off the circumstance. So my first goal, because sometimes I jump the gun, right? Like depending on what it is, I will jump the gun. But my goal now is to kind of like check my triggers first and foremost, right? Like what is it exactly that is kind of giving me that feeling? If I can clock it. If I can't clock it, I'm gonna distance myself until I can kind of figure it out, because there might be a lot at play there. But if I can understand, and it's kind of like some people change dramatically due to like new people in their lives, due to like their own traumas they may come across. And like sometimes you're gonna have to make the hard choice to be like, we are not able to support each other and like give the trust that we need. I've had one friend where I had to end things because I knew I also could not be trusted to be a good friend to their situation, but I also couldn't trust them to approach me in the manner that made us friends to begin with. So it's like always a hard choice, but it's always like my goal is always to establish what has changed if I can, and then what needs to change on my end to either make myself comfortable with the relationship at the level of trust we are now at, or to make myself, scarred, like to take myself out of the situation entirely. There's one way or the other, really. And it can take a lot of self-reflection and time. So like you may feel a little off kilter for a while, but like it comes to eventually, hopefully.
This is still a work in progress, but for me, it's about gauging, like communicating with that person. From like, I've done the distance thing, and that's uncomfortable for me. And I like to just find out what's going on with a person, and that's not always easy for people as well. So it honestly, it's just right now I kind of have to deal with things the way I need to, because I can't handle the emotional like turmoil if I don't address it. So I try to wait a little bit, and make sure it's not just me. I do look at the triggers and like feel it out. But then if it comes to someone that I really care about, I try to communicate with them and get a feel for like what may be happening with them. And then if it has to do with me, and I try to like ease into those questions, but I do ask them pretty directly, and just hope that I'll get a response from that person. And not everybody is capable of being honest or dealing with issues like that. And this is new for me, honestly. I just recently started allowing myself to do that, because I kind of stayed stuck in some uncomfortable, untrustworthy situations. But that was because I wasn't really fully caring about myself. So I guess if you're in a place where someone you feel is not able, that you're not able to trust them anymore, maybe see where you can build your strength up first to even be able to have that conversation. Because that was the hard thing for me, is bringing that to people gave me so much anxiety, and I'd get pushback from that person, and then I would pull back from not even like having this thought that something is off. Maybe they would deny it or something like that, right? And so just me getting like confident in myself has really helped me be able to address that with someone who I'm feeling like I can't really trust you right now with something in my life. So that's how I would say I would address that if it's showing up.
Just to add on to what Kristen said, one thing that like the strength it takes to go up to somebody that you have established trust with in this like mutual relationship and be like, something's changed, I want to talk about it, is intense. Like it's, especially when you have problems trusting, right? Like to go into that space and be like vulnerable about the trust itself, that something's changed, that it needs to be, figured out. So even just doing that is a great sign of strength and healing, in my mind. And it's also just very, I guess, like validating to your own self-trust to be able to go in there and be like, I'm trusting myself enough to like speak up on this, to come and explain what's going on. As well as a huge type of trust building in that you're hoping that they're going to respond and like find a solution. So when you can do that, it's just something to be very proud of, because there's so much at play that it can trigger so many like vulnerabilities. So like kudos, and like I think that's amazing as like something. So
I exit. I exit with little to no explanation. I don't ghost people. What I say is that this is not working out for me. And if the person cares to hear why, I have no problem sharing that information. But I no longer stay longer than I need to. And that's something I've learned, that it doesn't matter how long I've known you, how close we've gotten tight. Like, there is no amount of time or money or anything that is worth my peace and my safety. So.
So definitely finding ways to calm your nervous system and release the trauma that's in your body and in your mind. Um, that's the first thing. You know, I mean, you can try to adjust yourself to understand other people, but it really comes down to what feels right and what makes sense to you and your body. And like abuse throws you off, at least that's what I've experienced and I've heard from a lot of people. It's like your sense of what's right or not kind of gets skewed. And so you may not be in a place that you can make the right judgment about someone because you're so overwhelmed or consumed with the trauma that you're recovering from. So 100% take care of yourself first. Get yourself into a clear headspace, more clear. I mean, clear is kind of not completely possible unless you're a Buddha, yeah, you know, what do they call it, monk? You know, you're always meditating. But that would be the goal, I would say, to relax yourself. And the more you can get your thoughts and feelings out about the event, how it makes you feel, so that you're able to clearly see yourself, and then you can clearly see if you can trust someone else or not.
I am a very big fan of like baby steps when it comes to everything. Um, so taking your time is like always one of the best things I could say. Like, it's going to be hard to trust yourself, but if you take like, you know, the small steps to give somebody else trust in small ways, it also will help you build your own trust. But on top of that, and it's such a hard lesson, and like I, for lack of a better phrasing, fuck it up on my own terms for myself quite a bit. So it's one that I am working on, but is not blaming yourself when you are wrong. Like Kristen stated, like our nervous systems can get so messed up, but it doesn't like make it your fault if you misread things. It's you're doing the best you can with the knowledge you have at the time. And that is okay. And sometimes even without like trauma, people can just be wrong or like misread things because we're not mind readers. So give yourself grace if it happens as best as you can. And know that like you're not alone in dealing with trust. It is a very hard thing to give once it's been violated so much. So like take your time, give yourself grace, know you're not alone, and eventually I really hope you're able to open up.
I would say my advice is to take your time. Don't let anyone rush you, especially as women, as especially when you're getting into your 30s or maybe your like 20s, people are always pushing things on you like, why aren't you married, or why aren't you doing this, or why aren't you with this person? I need to work on myself first, and I'm only going to attract the kind of wavelength of partner that I'm on. And if I'm not where I need to be, I can't expect to meet someone where I want them to be, if that kind of makes sense. So take your time. If it takes 2 years, 1 year. I've been single for 5 years. My last situation happened in 2018, and I've been single ever since, and I do not regret it. I have those moments where I feel like maybe I want a partner, but I don't look at it as I'm by myself. I'm with myself, and I'm looking for someone to be with me. That's number one. And number two is just to trust yourself, because you know what's best for you, and your gut or your spirit guides or whatever explanation or logic you want to use, your body will let you know when something's not right, and you need to listen to that. So